Joe Biden's border COVID crisis goes code red this week on Come On Now. Joe Biden keeps saying he wants us to follow the science when it comes to COVID. Well, if he really wanted to follow the science, and if he wants us to follow the science, he could do this one thing for us, and that is shut down the chaos that he created at the border. The border crisis has gone code red on his watch. It is accelerating, despite the fact that the media is not covering it as they were covering it a few weeks or months ago. The fact is, in July, more than 180,000 people were apprehended at the border, and of course that doesn't count the number who were not apprehended. No one knows how many were not apprehended. That's kind of how that works. Meanwhile, Joe Biden keeps saying, wear a mask, get a vaccine, and all that may be good advice depending on where you are and what your situation is, but he hasn't closed the border. This is how things look there right now, according to Fox News.
Exclusive pictures in the Friday lightning round of Donna, Texas, a facility there packed with migrants, packed just like we saw it months ago. The mayors in several towns along the southern border in Texas, saying they're at a breaking point right now. They cannot handle it anymore.
That's one town in Texas. Here's another.
Typically, there are barely any people under this bridge, but in recent days, there have been hundreds packed underneath there. On Sunday, there was well over 1,000 as this border surge showing absolutely no signs of slowing down here in the Rio Grande Valley. We talk about what we see here in La Jolla every morning and every night. Take a look at this video we shot out here last evening. Another group of migrants just walking up the road here. Once they cross the Rio Grande, they walk around the incomplete border wall. They just walk right here to this park in La Jolla, Texas, and they give themselves up to Border Patrol. We saw some of them getting their pulses taken, some of them getting health checks, but happens every single day. Take a look at this video we shot right here this morning. This is part of that group we just showed you in the live shot just now. Started off as a much bigger group. Border Patrol actually telling us in this area they apprehended more than 500 people overnight. So that kind of gives you a sense of just how many people are streaming in here.
Now, I talk a lot about the border issue in Texas, but of course the crisis isn't limited to Texas. Here is Arizona's Attorney General writing a scathing letter to the Biden administration about the crisis on Arizona's border.
Well, what we are seeing in Arizona is going to affect the entire country. Basically, we've seen a record amount of fentanyl coming into this country. We've seen a record amount of people illegally crossing our southern border. We know that there's a record amount of gotaways. And this is not only a seasonal problem, it's a generational problem, Ainsley. And it's the Biden administration is essentially subsidizing and incentivizing people to come here. And shame on Secretary Mayorkas, because since he has been the Secretary of Homeland Security, 1 million people have illegally crossed our southern border just this year in the last 6 months since he's been secretary. That's like the entire population of Joe Biden's home state of Delaware in less than a year.
So we've heard from Texas and Arizona on the border. We haven't heard much from the blue states, interestingly enough. Here in Texas, Governor Greg Abbott has tried to get some control over the border by stopping cars that the federal government is using to move migrants around the state. By the way, not telling state or local officials where it's moving these people from or to. Guess what the Biden administration did? It sued Texas to try and stop Texas from keeping its own people safe. That should tell you something about this crisis. Is it a crisis by design? Well, if it wasn't, why would the Biden administration be suing Texas for trying to keep its own people safe? Biden's clearly violating his oath of office in all of this. Now, where can all of this go? Well, first, we have this Lambda variant of the virus coming in, we have the Delta variant, and we have Biden checking to see whether or not he has the authority to mandate masks for school children nationwide. Newsflash and spoiler alert, he does not have that authority, but spoiler alert, he won't care. He's already flouted court decisions, and he'll flout another one if he thinks he can get away with it. So where will all this go? Well, in addition to the fentanyl coming in addition to the COVID coming in, we're going to have more violence coming in. There was a California official a few weeks ago who warned of imminent violence coming in from the cartels. Now, here's a little sample of cartel violence. A soccer game was being played down in Mexico, and the cartels disrupted it with a gunfight. Check this out. It may seem alarmist to talk about cartel violence down in Mexico when we're also talking about the border and COVID and everything else. But the fact is, we're seeing this violence come across our border now. It's been rumored for a couple of months that the cartels basically control the border. In Chicago, we just had 86 people shot over last weekend. In one weekend, we had a police officer, Ella French, ambushed and killed on duty. Violence is rising across this country. Joe Biden is doing nothing about it. It's not just code red on the border, it's code red across America, and our president is absent and unable to lead. Come on now. I'm Bryan Preston.